She embarrassed a poor beggar in the Lagos market, not knowing she was her mother. One moment of pride, one lifetime of regret. Watch how a daughter uncovers a family secret that changes everything. Before you continue, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this powerful story. The morning sun glared over Belogan Market in Lagos, burning hot against the tin roofs and the restless crowd. Traders shouted prices, kiki horns echoed, and the smell of fried akara and petrol hung in the air like a stubborn shadow. Business was alive, money was moving, and humiliation was waiting for someone. The beggar woman sat in the corner by a pillar outside a fabric shop. She wrapped her thin frame in a torn brown shawl and held out a small metal bowl. Her fingers trembled as she whispered for help. She looked too old for her age, skin rough, eyes full of stories that nobody wanted to hear. Her name was Mrs. Helen Carter, though no one in that busy market cared to know it. To them, she was just another poor, nameless beggar in Lagos, forgotten by society and swallowed by hunger. Money had once answered her name. Comfort once lived in her house. But life was unpredictable, and the storm that stole everything from her did not ask for permission. Across the market, a shiny black SUV pulled up. Freshly washed, engine humming like power itself. When the door opened, a young woman stepped out wearing designer sunglasses, a green silk blouse, and cream high-waist trousers. She walked like someone who never begged the world for anything. Her name was Isabella Turner, and Lagos respected her, at least on Instagram. Isabella was an influencer, a businesswoman, and a woman who believed struggle was a choice. She moved through the market followed by her personal assistant, Bridget Shaw, and a cameraman who recorded content for her channel, Bella Inspires. Bella Inspires was full of motivational speeches, expensive restaurants, and advice about becoming successful. It never showed tears. It never showed fear. It never showed how lonely success could be. Today, Isabella was at Belogan to film a new segment titled, "Why Hard Work Has No Alternative." She planned to lecture young people about refusing laziness and entitlement. She wanted visuals of Lagos hustle behind her, colorful, chaotic, authentic. Bridget whispered, "Bella, the sun is too strong. Maybe we record under a shade." "No," Isabella replied. "Hard work doesn't wait for weather. We must push ourselves." Bridget nodded, impressed as always. The cameraman started adjusting his equipment. Isabella checked her makeup through her phone camera and smiled at her reflection, satisfied. Then, the sound of a weak voice pulled her attention. "Please, anything for food," Mrs. Helen whispered from the corner, holding out her bowl. Isabella frowned. Why do people come out like this? So dirty, so unprepared, no dignity at all. Bridget swallowed hard. "She looks hungry." "Hunger should push people to work," Isabella said sharply, "not sit on the floor begging." Mrs. Helen lifted her eyes, slow and tired. Deep sadness lived there. "I used to work. I worked very hard," Isabella scoffed. "Everybody claims hardship, but look at me. I worked for my life." Her voice rose, loud enough for nearby traders to hear. A small crowd paused to watch. Lagos loved drama. The cameraman whispered, "Should I record? This could trend." Isabella smirked. "Start rolling." He raised the camera. Isabella stepped forward with confidence and annoyance. She stood above the old woman like a teacher correcting a stubborn student. "Madam, why are you here?" she asked loudly. "Look at your condition. Look at how you smell. Lagos is not for lazy people." Mrs. Helen blinked, stunned and embarrassed. I lost my home, my job, my child, the crowd murmured. Traders exchanged looks. Some pitied the beggar. Others waited for entertainment. You think Lagos cares about your excuses? Isabella continued. Everybody has a sad story, but we don't sit down waiting for pity. Her voice rose again, fueled by pride and the invisible audience online. Mrs. Helen's hands shook. Tears threatened to fall from her tired eyes. I never asked for pity. I only asked for food. Bridget tugged Isabella's arm gently. Bella, maybe leave her. She's just what? Isabella snapped. Everyone must learn. Our youth must stop behaving like victims. A trader hissed under his breath. If success stay humble person, I go last. If he no humble, Lagos go humble am. But Isabella kept talking, unaware of the truth standing before her like a shadow she once knew. Show your bowl, Isabella demanded. Mrs. Helen hesitated, then slowly lifted the tiny metal bowl. Only 3 dirty coins rattled inside. Look at that, Isabella said. Is that how to live? Why not stand up and do business? Sell pure water, wash clothes, work in traffic, something. Mrs. Helen lowered her head. My body is not strong. Age has taken my strength. Age is not an excuse, Isabella shouted. The cameraman zoomed in. Then something unexpected happened. Something that made the air feel colder. Mrs. Helen whispered a name. Not loud, not bold, but full of pain. Isabella? Isabella froze. A chill rushed through her body. How do you know my name? She demanded. Mrs. Helen lifted her shaky hand and touched her own chest. I know your name because I gave it to you. Silence stabbed the market. Bridget gasped. The traders stopped pretending to arrange goods. Their eyes widened. Even the camera stopped moving. Isabella felt her heartbeat slam against her ribcage. What nonsense! Who are you? Mrs. Helen swallowed, tears finally escaping the corners of her eyes. I am Helen Turner. I am your mother. The world around Isabella muffled, like sound had been swallowed by shock itself. The heat of the sun suddenly felt colder, and every word she had said moments ago became a knife cutting her own pride. The woman she shamed, the woman she mocked, the woman she called lazy, was the same woman who brought her into the world. And yet Isabella had no memory of her. Not because the memory was gone, but because she had been taught to forget. The market did not breathe for several seconds. Traders, who moments ago bargained over fabrics, now stared with round eyes. A girl selling sachet water stopped mid-shout. Even the restless Lagos breeze seemed to pause. Isabella forced a laugh, thin and awkward. This is some kind of tricks, right? You must be confused. But Mrs. Helen did not blink. The truth sat heavy on her face, like old sorrow that refused to leave. I am your mother, Isabella. I carried you for 9 months. I named you after my grandmother. I watched you take your first breath. She placed a trembling palm on her chest. I remember. Isabella's heart pounded fast. Her breathing turned uneven. No, my mother died when I was 2. That is what my father always told me. A whisper passed through the crowd. Bridget covered her mouth. The cameraman lowered the device. Mrs. Helen shook her head slowly. I did not die. I lived. But my life was taken from me. A deeper silence followed, the kind that demanded answers. Isabella felt anger rising, not because she believed the beggar, but because she refused to believe her. This is ridiculous, she snapped. My father would never lie about something like this. A small smile, tired and full of pain, touched Mrs. Helen's lips. Your father, Victor Turner, is a man who fears the truth. He fears what truth can destroy. Something inside Isabella trembled at the sound of that name, paired with fear. Stop mentioning my father, she warned. But Mrs. Helen continued, voice cracking like old wood. He took you away from me. He told the world I abandoned you. He told you I was dead. But I was alive. I was looking for you. Bridget's eyes widened. Bella, wait. Isn't your dad always quiet about your childhood? Isabella clenched her jaw. Because it was painful. Because he raised me alone. Because my mother died of sickness. That was the story. Mrs. Helen's shoulders shook. He never told you I was the one who fell sick. He never told you it was depression. He never told you it happened after he lost his company and started drinking. He never told you I was taken to a mental health facility, not a grave. That last word cut through the market like a blade. Mental health facility, not grave. The crowd murmured again, not with excitement now, but discomfort. Nigerians did not like to discuss such topics in public. It carried shame, misunderstanding, and silence. Enough, Isabella yelled, voice breaking. You are lying. You are trying to use my name to get money. People do scams in Lagos every day. Mrs. Helen lowered her gaze. I do not want your money. I want my daughter to know I did not abandon her. The words hit Isabella directly in the chest. A woman from the market, tall, dark-skinned, wrapped in a purple scarf, finally spoke. Young lady, look at the woman well. There is resemblance. Another added, their eyes are the same, and the mouth. Isabella felt heat rush to her face. She hated the crowd. She hated the confrontation. She hated how her world felt suddenly unsafe. She hissed, I am leaving. She turned sharply and walked toward the SUV. Bridget hurried after her. The cameraman glanced at the beggar woman, unsure whether to stop recording or follow. Mrs. Helen's voice rose desperately as Isabella walked away. I still have your birth necklace. The silver one with the letter I. You wore it for 3 years. I kept it safe. Isabella froze mid-step. Her throat tightened. Her father once told her that necklace belonged to a dead mother. He said there was no picture, no diary, nothing else kept from her. What necklace? She asked, turning halfway. Mrs. Helen stood slowly with shaky legs, as though her bones were made of glass. She reached into her shawl and pulled out a small, folded handkerchief. When she opened it, a thin silver necklace caught the sunlight. A tiny letter I dangled at the end, elegant and old, but unmistakably real. Bridget gasped. Oh my God, Bella! Isabella's breath stuttered. Her knees felt weak. Memories she never knew she had stirred beneath the surface, flashes of a warm voice humming lullabies, a woman braiding her hair gently, a necklace shining against the sun. Strangers cannot invent memories. Isabella whispered, Father said we lost it in the old house fire. There was no fire, Mrs. Helen answered. There was anger, there was shame, there was fear, but no fire. The crowd exchanged looks again. Lagos loved stories, but Lagos also loved truth, and truth usually revealed itself if you waited long enough. Isabella's phone rang suddenly, slicing the moment in half. She looked at the screen. Dad. Calling, her heart sank. She answered with a trembling voice. Dad? Victor Turner's voice came sharp and loud. Isabella, leave that market now. Do you hear me? Her spine stiffened. How did you know something is happening? I said leave. Do not talk to anyone there. His voice carried panic, and panic was not his usual language. Isabella glanced at the beggar woman. Dad, There is someone here saying she is my mother. Silence. Heavy, dangerous. Then a low exhale. She is nobody. Do not let her manipulate you. So it's not true? Isabella asked. It is nonsense that he snapped. That woman is mentally unstable. She tried to kill you as a baby. The crowd heard every word. The phone was on speaker by accident. Mrs. Helen closed her eyes as if stabbed. That is not true, she whispered. Isabella's voice shook. Dad, did she die? Yes, he lied. She died long ago. That woman is pretending. Before Isabella could speak, the phone suddenly cut off. Battery dead, or connection refused. No one knew. The crowd stared at Isabella now, waiting for her next breath, her next belief, her next collapse. Mrs. Helen's voice was barely audible. I never tried to harm you, Isabella. I loved you. I lost you. That is my truth. Tears slid down her face. Not fresh tears, but tears that had waited years for release. For the first time since arriving in the market, Isabella had no answer, no speech, no lecture, no pride. She felt small, she felt scared. But Lagos did not give room for fear to bloom fully, not without interruption. A market security officer approached. Madam, he said to Isabella, there is problem. A man from the local council say beggars must leave today. If she no move, dem go carry her. Mrs. Helen's shoulders caved. She whispered, not again. Isabella looked at her, really looked at, and for the first time she felt something heavy settle in her chest. Not because she was sure the woman was her mother, but because she was no longer sure she was not. The market heat throbbed like a loud drum against people's skin. Radios blasted Afro beats from a corner shop, while traders argued over prices. Lagos never cared if someone's life was falling apart. Business continued, voices rose, and time marched forward. But in the space between two stalls, Isabella stood, trapped in a moment she could not escape. Security repeated, firmer this time. Madam, beggars must leave market today. Local council say make we clear them. If she no move, we go carry her. Mrs. Helen nodded quietly. I will go. Her voice was humble. But there was no dignity in the way she tried to lift herself. Her knees shook, and she nearly fell. Without meaning to, Isabella stepped forward. Wait. She didn't know what she wanted to say, or why she cared. But the words escaped before her pride could stop them. Bridget pulled her aside. Bella, if this woman is truly your mother, we don't know that, Isabella snapped. But if she is, Bridget continued, then what you do now matters. The weight of that sentence settled on Isabella's chest. The cameraman lowered his equipment. The crowd waited. Even the market security paused. Isabella turned to Mrs. Helen. Where have you been all this time? Why didn't you look for me? Mrs. Helen let out a tired sigh. I did, for years, but your father moved you. He changed numbers, he changed churches, he changed friends. He said you needed stability. And you, Isabella asked. I was not stable, Mrs. Helen admitted. I was sick. Depression is not visible, like malaria. It hides, it confuses. It makes you feel like the world wants you gone. Isabella swallowed. Mental health was something influencers liked to talk about online. Trendy quotes, soft music, and filters. But real-life mental illness was messy, shameful, and expensive to treat in a place like Lagos. You got better? Isabella asked. For a while, Mrs. Helen replied, but when I came out, nothing was left. House gone, family gone, my own daughter gone. I became a stranger. The crowd's expression softened. Nigeria was hard, but losing family was harder. Still, Isabella muttered, "Why are you begging on the streets?" Mrs. Helen hesitated. Work was not easy. People do not hire someone who shakes when stress comes. I tried washing clothes. I tried selling biscuits. I tried church cleaning. But life has weight, and sometimes that weight is heavy, too heavy. It was not an excuse, just a truth spoken without shame. Security stepped forward again. "Madam, time done go." Mrs. Helen nodded and tried to gather her few belongings: a shawl, an old purse, the necklace, and a small plastic bag that looked older than memory. She took 2 steps before her legs buckled. The crowd gasped. She caught herself on a wall, breathing hard. Bridget rushed to help. "She needs water." A trader passed bottled water without asking for money. Lagos was tough, but Lagos was not heartless. Mrs. Helen drank slowly, then wiped her mouth. "I am fine," but she wasn't. Isabella stared at her, really stared. For the first time, the old woman was not a nuisance, not a beggar, not content for social media. She was a person, a life, a story, and maybe a mother. Bridget leaned closer. "Bella, we can't just leave her." Isabella hated how her pride screamed against what her heart whispered. "I am not taking her home," she declared. "No one asked that," Bridget said. "But take her to a hospital, or at least somewhere safe." The idea made Isabella uneasy. At home, her father ruled every corner. His voice, his opinions, his stories shaped her world. Bringing this woman anywhere near him felt like opening a locked room. Yet abandoning her felt worse. Isabella exhaled sharply. "Fine, I'll take her somewhere." The crowd watched as Isabella signaled her driver. The security officer nodded and stepped aside. Lagos loved endings, even uncertain ones, and it seemed this scene was closing. Mrs. Helen hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I do not want to trouble you," Isabella swallowed. "Just get in the car." But as they reached the SUV, something unexpected happened. A familiar voice called out, "Isabella?" She turned. A tall man in a neatly ironed shirt approached. His face was serious, his presence direct. People moved aside for him instinctively. It was Pastor Michael, her father's longtime spiritual advisor, a man who had attended every Turner family function since Isabella was a child. He looked from Isabella to the old woman. His eyes darkened. "What are you doing?" "Helping her," Isabella said. Pastor Michael shook his head slowly. "That woman is trouble. Your father warned me years ago what she can do. Leave her here." Mrs. Helen flinched as though slapped. Bridget frowned. "Sir, she almost fainted. She needs care." Pastor Michael raised a hand. "Compassion has its place, but wisdom has its purpose. Some people are not meant to be helped." Isabella stared at him, disturbed. "Are you saying that about a human being?" "I am saying that about a threat," he replied. "Your father saved you from her once. Do not repeat mistakes." Mrs. Helen whispered, "He has been lying to everyone for decades." Pastor Michael glared at her. "You should remain quiet." The crowd sensed conflict and leaned in again. Lagos loved drama, like fire loved dry wood. Isabella looked at Pastor Michael harder. "You said my mother died." He blinked. "That was the truth your father gave." "But it was not the truth," Isabella whispered. For the first time, doubt cracked the pastor's confidence. "Isabella," he said, voice lower, "your father is a good man. Do not disgrace him because of a beggar." Isabella stiffened. "Good men do not bury the living." The pastor faltered, shocked. Bridget whispered, "Bella, we should go." Isabella nodded. She reached for Mrs. Helen's arm. Pastor Michael stood in their path. "If you leave with her, your father will be furious." For a moment, silence became a weapon. Isabella finally answered, "Then let him be." She guided Mrs. Helen into the SUV. Bridget followed. The door shut. The engine hummed. As the car rolled out of Belogan Market, the traders watched silently. Some shook their heads. Some whispered prayers. Some smiled, sensing a story bigger than gossip. Mrs. Helen looked out the window, eyes shining with memories of a city she once belonged to. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. Isabella did not know. She only knew one thing. Sometimes destiny begins with disobedience. The ride out of Belogan Market was slow. The traffic in Lagos always behaved like it had a mind of its own, stubborn, chaotic, and loud. Drivers cursed, buses squeezed into impossible spaces, and hawkers slapped car windows to sell everything from plantain chips to phone chargers. Inside the SUV, silence sat heavy. Mrs. Helen leaned against the seat, breathing carefully as if every inhale carried memory. Bridget kept watching her, worried. Isabella stared straight ahead, her mind spiraling in directions she could not name. 10 minutes passed before Isabella finally spoke. "Where do you live?" There was no pride in her tone now, just curiosity and maybe fear. Mrs. Helen hesitated. "Under the bridge at Oweligba." Bridget's hand flew to her chest. "Jesus, for how long?" "On and off," Mrs. Helen answered. "Sometimes I sleep in church premises. They lock the gates early." Isabella bit her lip. Lagos was a city of dreams, but it was also a city that swallowed those dreams whole. People disappeared inside it, not because they wanted to, but because the world gave them no place to stand. "What about family?" Isabella asked softly. "No siblings? No relatives?" Mrs. Helen shook her head. "My sister died long ago. My parents, too. After I fell sick, nobody knew what to do with me." The car grew quieter. Bridget asked gently, "What about your father? Isabella's grandfather?" Mrs. Helen gave a sad smile. "He was gone before she was born." There was no safety net in that answer. No someone to call. No place to return to. Just survival. The SUV slowed at a red light. A beggar child tapped on the glass, palm out. Isabella's eyes flicked to the woman beside her, and the world felt suddenly connected in a painful way. Isabella cleared her throat. "I can't take you home. My father would—" "I know," Mrs. Helen interrupted softly. "That house was always his, never mine." The words hit harder than expected. Bridget looked away. The driver turned towards Isabella. "Madame, we de near Ojuelegba. Make we drop am?" Isabella hesitated. Dropping her off meant returning life to how it was that morning. Content, fame, comfort, indifference. But those things now felt thin, like paper. "Not there," Isabella finally said. "Drive to St. Grace Hospital in Surulere." Mrs. Helen's eyes widened. "Hospital is expensive." "I didn't ask if it was cheap," Isabella replied. Bridget let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Minutes later, the SUV pulled into the hospital compound. Nurses rushed to get a wheelchair when they saw the elderly woman struggling to walk. Lagos hospitals were used to emergencies. This one was no different. As they wheeled her inside, a nurse asked, "Next of kin?" Isabella stared at the question like it was a trap. Before she could speak, Mrs. Helen whispered, "Right, Isabella Turner." The nurse scribbled it down as though it were the most normal sentence in the world. Inside the ward, a doctor checked her vitals, then stepped aside. "She is dehydrated and severely malnourished," he explained, But the blood pressure is worrying. We need to run tests. It will take some hours. Isabella nodded. Money could solve this part, for now. After the doctor left, Bridget sat at the edge of the bed. Do you want anything? Food? Water? Mrs. Helen smiled weakly. I want fresh air, but I will settle for rest. Isabella watched her close her eyes. Her face softened in sleep, and for a moment Isabella saw something that frightened her. Resemblance. The shape of the nose, the curve of the eyebrows, the same faint dimple. Silence wrapped around them until Bridget whispered, Bella, what are we going to do about your dad? Isabella swallowed hard. I don't know. But she did know. He would not accept this quietly. Victor Turner was a man who built his life on image, influence, and control. And Isabella had just broken the invisible line he drew years ago. As if summoned by thought, Isabella's phone buzzed. The name flashed on the screen. Dad Bridget's eyes widened. Pickett. Isabella stepped outside the ward and answered. Hello? Victor's voice came sharp and cold. Where are you? Hospital, she replied. With that woman? Yes. There was no shout, no insult, just a chilling pause. Isabella, he said slowly, listen to me. That woman destroyed our family once. Do not let her do it again. Isabella's heart hammered. Did she really try to kill me? Victor exhaled. She was unstable. She broke things. She screamed for days. She said spirits were after her. She almost drowned you once because she believed water could cure you. Isabella closed her eyes. And the mental facility? She belonged there, Victor snapped, and I did what I had to do as a father. But did she abandon me? No, Victor said. I abandoned her. The shock nearly knocked her voice away. Why? Isabella whispered. Because some people cannot be saved, Isabella. He hung up before she could answer. Isabella stared at the phone. The world felt tilted, like she no longer trusted the floor beneath her. When she returned to the ward, she froze at the door. Mrs. Helen wasn't sleeping anymore. She was awake, watching her with eyes full of quiet comprehension. You spoke to him, she said. Yes. And he defended himself. Yes, Mrs. Helen nodded once. He always knew how to speak first. Isabella approached the bed. Her voice was small. Did you really try to drown me? Mrs. Helen smiled faintly. I bathed you on the balcony. That was all. Your father saw me pour water over your head and shouted that I wanted to kill you. The neighbors believed him. And when enough people believe something, it becomes truth. The door opened suddenly. A nurse entered with forms. We need payment and signature for tests. Isabella stared at the paper, at the line titled Relationship to Patient. Her hand hovered, shaking. Before she could write anything, Bridget whispered, Bella, look. Mrs. Helen reached out, fingers trembling, and gently held Isabella's wrist. I do not want to force you into family, she said softly. I only want you to know you were loved once. That sentence cracked something inside Isabella she did not know was breakable. With trembling fingers, she wrote, Daughter Grace tried to focus on work, but the face of the old beggar woman haunted her like a shadow that refused to leave in daylight. That afternoon, Victoria Island felt cold to her, even under the harsh sun. Inside the office, printers hummed, phones rang, and people chased deadlines. Yet Grace's heart refused to behave like the rest of the world. She kept seeing the trembling hands, the cracked lips, the tired eyes of that woman at the bakery stall. Why did it bother her this much? She leaned back in her chair, pretending to read a report. Truth was, she was reading memories. Memories she had spent years burying under achievements, perfumes, designer bags, and silence. Her mother used to look at her that same way, soft, apologetic, as though being poor was a personal sin. Grace shook the thought away. No, that old woman cannot be related to me, she told herself. But her heart refused the lie. At lunchtime, her friend and colleague Darren stopped by her desk. "Market girl," he teased. "You look like you fought a whole buka with bare hands. What happened?" Grace forced a laugh. "Just tired. Let's go eat. You need fresh air." She agreed, hoping food would erase thoughts. They walked to a small restaurant nearby. The smell of jollof and fried turkey danced in the air. But as they sat, Grace noticed an elderly cleaner sweeping the floor slowly. Something about her movements, gentle, weak, and careful, pulled Grace's attention. Again, the same ache. Why did old, tired women suddenly seem familiar? Flash of memory. At home as a child, she remembered a woman sweeping their tiny balcony in Surulere, coughing softly as dust rose. She remembered small hands placing bread on her plate and saying, "Eat before it gets cold." She remembered love served in silence. But then came the fights, the debts, the disappointments, and finally, the day her mother disappeared. Left with neighbors, left with cousins, left with questions. Grace blinked the memory away. Darren was still talking about work. She pretended to listen, nodded when necessary, but her soul wandered elsewhere. Later that evening, after work, Grace found herself at the market again. She didn't plan it. Her body walked before her mind could protest. The market was rowdy, full of voices and colors. Traders shouted prices as motorcycle horns cried for space. Grace scanned the bakery stall. Empty. The old woman wasn't there. A strange panic wrapped around her chest. "Why am I panicking?" she asked herself. "She's just a stranger." But that word, stranger, felt wrong. Information drop. She approached the bread trader who had given the old woman food the previous day. "Excuse me," Grace said. "The old woman from yesterday, where is she?" The trader looked up, sighed, and wiped sweat from her forehead. "Which one? The one that begs?" "Yes. She no get strength today. I heard she fainted earlier near the bus stop." Grace's heart dropped. "Fainted? Market is hot. No food, no family, life wicked." No family. The words stabbed deeper than they should. Emotional turn. Without thinking, Grace hurried towards the bus stop. Her heels clicked sharply on broken pavement as she searched through the crowd. She looked left and right, breathing fast. Then she saw her, sitting near a broken bench, half-conscious, head bent forward. A sachet of water beside her, her breathing shallow. Grace froze. The world slowed. For the first time in years, she felt helpless. She stepped closer. The old woman looked up weakly. Their eyes met. Time stopped. Faces overlapped, present and past, old and young, stranger and mother. "Do you know me?" Grace whispered, voice trembling before she understood why she asked. The old woman stared deeply, as if searching her face for lost years. Her voice cracked, nearly a whisper. "You look like someone I once knew." Grace's heart pounded. "Who?" The old woman shut her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. "My daughter." The morning air in Lagos was sharp, carrying the smell of exhaust, dust, and fried akara from street vendors. But Grace didn't notice any of it. Her mind was fixed on one goal: the key, the safe, and the truth her father had buried for decades. Mrs. Helen was quiet beside her in the SUV. Her hands clutched her shawl, knuckles white. Neither spoke much. Silence, they both realized, could carry weight heavier than words. "You're sure this is the right place?" Grace finally asked, eyes scanning the familiar streets of Surulere. Mrs. Helen nodded. The old house hasn't changed much, only the paint and the neighbors. Your father, he moved things, but the safe is where I hid it. Grace felt her chest tighten. The word safe sounded like a promise and a threat. They stopped at a nondescript house tucked between two taller buildings. The windows were dusty, and the metal gate creaked as they entered. For years, this place had been silent to Grace, yet every brick now felt familiar. "Stay close," Mrs. Helen whispered. "Your father will try to interfere if he suspects anything." Grace nodded. She had thought she feared confrontation with her mother, but it was her father who now loomed large in her mind. Victor Turner, a man whose power in Lagos society was matched only by his stubborn pride, could turn simple truth-seeking into a battlefield. As they entered the old living room, Grace noticed the photographs on the wall, her as a baby, laughing, her mother with soft eyes, her father always watching, stern, controlling. Then, a sound, the click of a door. Victor Turner stepped into the room, his expensive suit in sharp contrast to the faded walls. His eyes locked on Grace, then on Mrs. Helen. "Isabella," he said evenly, though his jaw tightened. "What are you doing here?" Grace felt fear, but more than that, she felt a fire awaken inside her. "I'm finding the truth, Father," she said firmly. "No more lies." Victor's eyes darkened. "You don't understand. That woman," he gestured at Mrs. Helen, "was unstable. She could have ruined you. She could have ruined us." Mrs. Helen stepped forward, voice low but unwavering. "I never tried to ruin her, Victor. I only wanted to protect her. I only wanted her alive and safe. You took that choice from me." The tension thickened. The walls seemed to close in. Even the old air smelled charged with accusation. Grace's voice shook, but carried authority. "Dad, she is my mother. Not a stranger, not a threat. You lied to me, to her, to everyone. And now we're here to fix it." Victor's mouth opened, then closed. "You don't know what you're saying. I made decisions no one else could. You were my responsibility." "Responsibility?" Grace's eyes flared. "You call lying to your child responsibility? You call taking her from the only woman who loved her responsibility?" Mrs. Helen's voice rose, trembling with emotion. "I never stopped watching her. I never stopped praying she would be safe. And all you did was control the story, not care for the life." Victor's face hardened. "You think I didn't care? I built everything so she could have a better life. And this," he gestured at Mrs. Helen, "this chaos is your doing." Grace's hands clenched around the key. "The chaos was your doing, Father. The lies, the secrets. Now it's time for the truth. And I'm taking it." Mrs. Helen guided Grace to a small cabinet in the corner. Behind a false panel, a heavy safe hid in darkness. Grace inserted the key, her fingers trembling. The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo in the silent room. Inside were files, photographs, and documents stacked neatly. Legal papers, letters, and small keepsakes, everything her father never wanted her to see. Grace's eyes widened as she pulled them out one by one. Receipts showing her mother's financial sacrifices, letters from doctors detailing mental health struggles, evidence of her father's deliberate lies to cover the past, old photographs of mother and child, moments he had erased from family albums. Grace felt anger, sadness, and relief crash together. The truth wasn't just in the letters, it was in every photograph, every paper, every proof that her life had been stolen from her by design. Victor Turner's face darkened as he realized Grace had the evidence. For the first time, he was silent. The woman he controlled through fear now held the power of truth in her hands. Mrs. Helen reached for Grace, whispering softly, "The past may have been stolen, Isabella, but your future, that is yours to claim." Grace nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of freedom. She had been lied to, controlled, and manipulated, but she could choose now. Outside, Lagos continued, indifferent to the struggle inside the walls of the old Surulere house. But inside, a daughter reclaimed her past. A mother reclaimed her child, and the truth finally found its voice. The city lights of Lagos flickered against the evening sky, reflecting off traffic and glass buildings. But Grace hardly noticed. Her mind was still racing from the discoveries in the old house, the safe, the letters, the photographs, the truth that her father had tried so hard to hide. Mrs. Helen sat quietly in the SUV, wrapped in her shawl. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Hope that her child knew the truth. Hope that the stolen years could be reclaimed. But Lagos had a way of reminding you that life never gives second chances easily. The next morning, Grace returned home to confront her father. She entered the sleek Victoria Island mansion with purpose, key, and documents in hand. Victor Turner sat in the study, perfectly composed, as though nothing had happened. "Grace," he said smoothly, "I hope you're ready to listen." "I've seen everything," Grace said firmly. "The safe, the letters, the photographs, all your lies, all your manipulations. I have the truth now, and I'm not afraid anymore." Victor's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered, a storm behind calm waters. "You think the truth changes anything?" Grace shook her head. "No, it changes everything." Victor's face darkened. "You're making a mistake. That woman, your mother, is unstable. She never wanted you back. She has a history. I protected you." "Protected me?" Grace laughed bitterly. "By lying? By erasing her from my life? By making me grow up believing she didn't exist?" Victor rose, his tall frame imposing. "She could have destroyed everything. Our name, our legacy. I will not let her ruin us now." Mrs. Helen stepped forward, shaking but firm. "Victor, I never wanted your control. I only wanted my daughter safe, and she survived because I let her go, even when it hurt me most." Victor's jaw tightened. "You left her?" "Yes, to keep her alive," Mrs. Helen replied. Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with truth. "And now I am here, standing. We both are alive, Victor. Stop using fear as a weapon." Victor's calm shattered. He slammed a hand on the desk. "You don't understand. There's more. The documents you found, they are only part of it. There are others, people who know, people who have been watching us, threats you cannot even imagine." Grace froze. "Threats? What are you talking about?" Victor's voice dropped, almost a whisper, but it carried through the room like a cannon. "Your mother was never just a woman with struggles. She uncovered secrets, secrets about people who should never be exposed. I moved her, I hid the truth, and I protected you. But now, someone is watching. Someone knows." Mrs. Helen's face turned pale. She glanced at Grace, then whispered, "He's telling the truth. I tried to hide it, but there are people who won't forgive, people who want revenge." Grace's heart pounded. The safe, the documents, the letters, all of it was not just about family lies. It was about danger, about survival. For a moment, Silence filled the room. Lagos hummed outside, indifferent to the tension inside. Grace felt fear claw at her chest, but she also felt something stronger, courage. "I don't care about your threats, Dad," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "I will not let fear dictate my life. I will protect her. I will protect myself. And I will not let the lies continue." Victor stared at her, his face unreadable. For the first time, his daughter was no longer the child he could control. She was a woman who had tasted truth, and it had changed her. That evening, Grace returned to Mrs. Helen's temporary home in Surulere. The city lights reflected in her eyes, determination burning. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we plan. We make sure nothing, no lies, no threats, can hurt us again." Mrs. Helen reached for her hand. "I never thought I'd live to see this moment." Grace squeezed her hand. "We're not just surviving anymore. We're taking back what was stolen." The city outside continued its chaotic rhythm. Cars honked, people shouted, and Lagos moved on. But for Grace and her mother, tonight was a turning point. The moment when truth, courage, and love began to rewrite the story. The Lagos night was alive with sounds. Car horns, shouting vendors, the low hum of generators, and the occasional distant wail of a siren. But inside Surulere, Grace and Mrs. Helen sat in a dimly lit apartment, their eyes fixed on the documents they had taken from Victor's safe. Each paper was a puzzle piece, each photograph a memory. And together, they painted a picture Grace could no longer ignore. Her father's control over their lives was deeper, more dangerous than she had imagined. "Grace," Mrs. Helen whispered, "this isn't just about lies. Your father's enemies, they're still out there. And now, with these papers, we're exposed." Grace's stomach knotted. Exposed? To who? Mrs. Helen shook her head. "People who want revenge. People who never forgave the Turner family. Your father covered it all. But now, the truth is out." Suddenly, a loud bang rattled the front gate. Grace jumped, heart racing. She had expected confrontation from her father, but not from outsiders. "Who could that be?" she whispered. Mrs. Helen went to the window, peeking through the blinds. Outside, shadows moved swiftly, slipping past the dim streetlights. "It's them," she said softly, "those who wanted to make sure we never reclaimed the truth." Grace's mind spun. All the lies, all the secrets, all the danger Victor tried to hide, it had come back to them. Within minutes, the door shook violently. A group of masked men forced their way into the apartment building. Grace and Mrs. Helen ducked behind furniture, hearts pounding. "Stay calm," Mrs. Helen whispered. "I've been preparing for this." She revealed a hidden compartment under the floor where they could temporarily secure the documents. Grace slid the papers inside, clutching the key to the safe. The intruders searched room by room, their voices gruff, demanding papers and threats. Grace felt fear gnawing at her resolve, but she also felt something stronger: courage. "This is our life," she whispered to her mother. "We're not hiding anymore." Mrs. Helen nodded, eyes blazing. Exactly. One of the intruders moved too close, and Grace, acting on instinct, grabbed a nearby lamp and swung it, striking him. The man fell, and the others hesitated. In the chaos, a familiar voice cut through. "Step away from my daughter." Victor Turner appeared at the doorway, gun in hand, face pale with fury. The room froze. Grace's heart pounded. She had confronted him before, but never like this. Never when life itself was at risk. You brought them here, Victor accused, voice trembling with anger. You never learn. Stop hiding behind control, Father, Grace shot back. This isn't just your fight. You lied, you endangered us, and now it's time to face the truth. Mrs. Helen stepped beside Grace. It's over, Victor. You can't run the story anymore. The truth is ours. Victor's eyes flicked to the hidden documents, realization dawning. Grace had already secured them. For the first time, he understood. The daughter he tried to control was now stronger, smarter, and unafraid. The masked men, realizing Victor had lost control, fled into the night. Silence returned to the apartment, broken only by Grace's heavy breathing. Grace hugged her mother tightly. "We survived," she whispered. "We really survived." Mrs. Helen smiled through tears. "Not just survived, Isabella. We took back our lives. We took back the truth." Outside, Lagos continued its endless chaos. The city didn't care about family secrets, revenge, or stolen years, but inside that small apartment, mother and daughter had reclaimed something far more valuable: courage, love, and freedom. The Lagos dawn broke slowly over the city, painting Victoria Island and Surulere in soft gold and pink light. The chaos of the night before seemed like a distant memory, yet Grace felt its weight pressing on her chest. Every step she took, every breath she drew, reminded her that the battle wasn't over, not until the truth had been fully reclaimed. Mrs. Helen stood beside her, shawl still wrapped tightly around her shoulders. "Are you ready, Isabella?" she asked, quietly. Grace nodded. "I've waited my whole life for this." Their first stop was Victor Turner's office in his high-rise Lagos building. Security guards recognized Grace, but hesitated as she walked past with a confidence they had never seen in her. Inside the office, Victor waited, face unreadable, hands folded on the desk. The documents Grace had taken from the safe were now spread across the mahogany table. "You think this changes anything?" he asked, voice calm but tinged with fear. Grace's eyes didn't waver. "It changes everything. You lied for years. You endangered us, and you underestimated the power of truth and courage." Victor's jaw tightened. "And what do you plan to do?" Grace smiled faintly, her resolve clear. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows, not to shame you, but to make sure no one else suffers because of lies like yours." Victor rose suddenly, anger flashing in his eyes. But before he could act, a knock at the door broke the tension. Lawyers and trusted friends entered, the same people Victor had relied on for control. They had seen the documents. They had witnessed the truth. For the first time, Victor Turner was alone. Not because of force, but because the foundation of control he built on fear and deception crumbled under the weight of honesty. Grace and Mrs. Helen presented the evidence calmly but firmly. Each letter, photograph, and document told a story Victor could no longer rewrite. "You see," Grace said softly, "this isn't about revenge. It's about justice, transparency, and family." Victor remained silent. His empire of lies was exposed. He could no longer hide behind power, money, or threats. Later that evening, Grace and Mrs. Helen returned to Surulere. The market noise, the motorcycles, the vendors, all seemed different now. The city hadn't changed, but they had. Mrs. Helen embraced Grace tightly. "You've grown into a strong woman, Isabella. I always knew you would reclaim your life." Grace smiled through tears. "And I've learned something important. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love, protection, and truth. No matter how long it takes, the heart always knows its way home. Together, they walked to the small bakery stall where they had first reunited. Grace bought a loaf of bread for the old woman who had been her mother's companion through hard times. She handed it to her with a smile, tears in her eyes. The beggar woman smiled back, eyes shining. "Thank you, my child," she whispered. In that moment, Grace understood. Life had been harsh, deception had been cruel, but courage, love, and truth could reclaim what was stolen. As Lagos continued its endless hum, Grace and her mother stood side by side. Their journey had been filled with lies, danger, and fear, but it had also been filled with resilience, courage, and unwavering love. Grace whispered, almost to herself, "No matter what, truth always finds a way, and family can never be truly broken." The city might never notice, but in that small corner of Surulere, a mother and daughter had found freedom, forgiveness, and the power of reclaiming their story. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.